Okay, let's play some Witch on the Holy Night. Here we go. Type moon. Alright, here we go. Is that like a magic ley line? That's cool. Was that always a thing, or is that just for this game? I don't know if I ever noticed that. Alright. Where do I start? Where do I start? I am a ufotable. I don't know. I'm no, not ufotable. One thing of the anime. I am a Fate Stay Night connoisseur. I am a Type Moon connoisseur. I've played FGO religiously for like 2 to 3 years. Now I'm on and off. What else? What else? I've watched a little bit of the Cardinal Kokai anime. What else? What else? There's more. There's more. I've watched most of the Fate. I haven't watched Excel. Excel? Which one was it called? The one with Needle Chris? And that's pretty much it, right? Yeah. All right, here we go. I bought this game when it originally came out. The plan was to play it on the plane, and I fell asleep. It was a long flight, but here we go. I actually don't remember. I think I got almost through the prologue, I think, right? I think I saw like the chapter 1 number, and then I just stopped. I knocked out pretty quick, and then bam, I woke up, and we were at our destination. All right, here we go. It was a winter's day 8 year prior when it happened. The solemn morning when she understood the value of life for the very first time. We're watching Ava in theaters again. Boom. Her home was nestled on the side of a mountain. What did I just push? I pushed X instead of A. Around us was nothing but an hospital wilderness. She had no neighbors or childhood friends to speak of. Thinking like traveling to school or playing outside were more trouble than they ought to be. Indeed, it was pure water and bright stars. It was a place rich with memories, both frustrating and... I've never read that word. Halikan? Okay. That was only during the summer, though. Winters in those mountains were extremely frigid, each morning severer than the last, more severe. Her father would drive her to the train station after waiting 10 minutes for the engine to warm up and the iced-over windows to clear. Mind starting up the car for me. Okay, so now it's her turn. Her father would savor his morning coffee, leaving her to venture outside and rev the engine. Out the front door she would go, traversing the garden with icy breath until she reached Old Sedan. How cold is it in the mountains? As always, she inserted the key, then started the ignition. The engine rumbled to life. Just as she proudly finished a humble task she'd done so many times before. It's not good. A shrill scream pierced the air. She knew, even though it wasn't human, that feeble sound was a cry of agony. A few moments passed. Her father came out and opened the hood of the car. Creaking fan belts, a monstrous-looking engine, and something that didn't belong. There was a cat, a mother by the looks of it, and her 2 kittens. The 3 cats had been huddled for warmth in the engine's compartment. The mother cat was missing its head. One of the kittens had been mangled beyond recognition by the engine belts, and surely died instantly. The other kitten, its face half covered in blood, panted faintly. It desperately clung to its mother, rather the chunk of meat that was its mother with the last bit of life it could muster. Poor things. Her father lamented their plight. The previous night had been especially cold. After he had returned home yesterday, the cats must have snuck under the hood, drawn by the warmth of the engine. They had slept next to the engine and awoken to a storm of spinning bolts. Cars in the 80s were not sealed particularly well, so this was not unheard of. It's okay. It wasn't your fault. Her father's voice seemed distant. She could only make out a small tuft of kitten's gray fur. The rest of it was caked in blood of its mother and brother. I can see its skull. The fragile life of a speckled kitten. Trembling and possibly blind, it continued to nuzzle against his dead mother's chest. Wait. Wait for what? Oh, she took the kittens into her arms and ran deep in the mountains to her grandfather's house. Was it because she was overcome with regret? Or was it because of shock of grief? Years later, she still wasn't sure. Years later? Fighting back the welling tears, she burst into her grandfather's workshop. Her grandfather was a magician who could do anything. She had never seen magic. She knew that magic was a fantasy straight out of fairy tales, but so was her grandfather. Oh! And all I know about this game, this is like where like Nasu, right? Where Nasu started like his whole the Nasu universe, right? Like I know this is like the first game chronologically, so it's like they explain like the magic system and like how everything works. Supposedly, at least from what I've read on forums and online, and what I've heard from like peers. Okay, here we go. She had to find him. He was the only one who could help. I suppose that voice. I suppose you want me to alter this kitten's fate. The cave-dwelling magician said indifferently. The kitten needs our help, she pleaded. Whether it was a simple task or a Herculean labor, her grandfather would not stay. He simply granted the girl's childish wish like a magician. Did he bring her back? Oh no, the girl said. Before she knew it, however, she was holding a tiny corpse in her hand. Literally died. Its fur was cold, the warmth of life had left its body, and the tears she had fought so hard to hold back poured from her eyes. Regret sped through her chest like an endless gray sky. We were too late. Some things cannot be undone. Her mind struggled to come to grips with what had just occurred. The last 10 minutes were a total blank. Who she met, what she had known, it was all as if it had never happened. The only thing she was sure of was that life when extinguished can never return. That day, it was her mistake that gave birth to me? What? That day, it was her mistake that gave birth to me. Indeed. Who are we talking about? Whatever occurred that day, it was a day of nostalgia and longing. This is the fairy tale of 8 years ago. Okay, so it's a flashback. The day they first met that no magic can ever bring back. Who met? The cat? Okay. Chapter 1. Let me pause it. No? Oh, is that where it's saved? That's funny. So that's not the save button. Wait, arrogant, greedy, and able only to destroy. I must be a wolf. I don't have regrets. There's no looking back. If my pride had left you behind, my sincere condolences. But at any rate, I suppose it's my fate that died at the hands of a little Red Riding Hood. Is this the pause button? Nothing happened. Strange One. Oh, Chapter 1, Strange One. Okay. That's all I read? I read more, didn't I? It was a quiet morning. From her bed, she could see the sky was an ashen watercolor gray. The thermometer displayed 43 degrees Fahrenheit, a rather unforgiving temperature for November. Her stomach woke her up with a growl. Been there, done that. Pathetically reminding her that she'd had completely missed breakfast. But lazy mornings like today were for her a blessing. I love lazy mornings on the weekend. It's what I live for. It was already well past 8 in the morning. On any ordinary weekday, tardiness would be unavoidable, but today classes were canceled and commemoration of the school's anniversary. I have not read that in a while. Gratefully, she'd had every intention of taking it easier for the first time in ages. Outside the windows was a gloomy gray, and it reminded her of her more than of evening. I cannot read. Oh my god. Outside the window was a glooming gray, and it reminded her more of evening than morning. Okay. It wasn't a pleasant morning by any stretch of the imagination. But having been up all night until just 3 hours ago, she couldn't care less about the weather outside. All she cared about was more sleep. Relatable. As long as she can spend her morning in bed, what was outside was of no concern to her. She shut the curtains, then closed her eyes and tried to sleep and reclaim her. I forgot it's voiced. Okay. I didn't even know that. Then she closed her eyes and tried to sleep and tried to let sleep reclaim her. I like a nice, uneventful dream for 2 hours, thank you. Blissfulness slumber found her soon enough. Her consciousness faded. However, the phone is ringing. Her simple request would mercifully refuse. A faint but shrill sound lingered in her ears. It was the unmistakable ring of a telephone. Much to her... What word is that? Much to her chagrin, out of habit, her eyes popped open. Oh, come on. Why today of all days? The telephone was situated in the foyer of the first floor. Answering him, walking down the 30-foot corridor and going down a flight of stairs. In her sleep-deprived state, the distance seemed somewhere between incredibly far and astronomically far. The phone's incessant ringing continued. She knew the caller would eventually give up if she ignored it, but she chose to fight the urge. That was the corridor. 30 steps. Why doesn't... Who's Alice? Why doesn't Alice answer it? She thought her house... Oh, it's a housemate. She thought her housemate would get it, but she soon had to abandon all hope. The realization struck that her housemate did not have the day off from school and was likely in class at her prestigious little hilltop academy. The caller proved incredibly persistent. The persistence made the volume of the ringing seem even louder. I'm trying to sleep here. She was left with no choice but to get up, throw a top on, and leave that room. Oh, is this game rated M? What's going on here? God, it's cold. She rubbed her hands together with to warm her numb fingers. The mansion's heating system was inadequate to say the least, which meant that winter was very worst of uninvited guests. Never more so than on a drear morning as this, when one didn't need to use a thermometer to know how cold it was. The mansion sat in the mountains and was surrounded by dense forests. Winter always arrived here first, before moving on to nearby towns. The robotic ring of the telephone reverberated throughout the long hallway. The mansion's furnishings had been so perfectly maintained that it made the place feel unlived. Unlived or unlivid? Unlived, yeah. It seemed lonelier than it did splendid. Coupled with a drear morning, it could have passed for a haunted house. Such a lonely house. Well, it is a haunted house, I suppose. It's too large for just the two of us. That's actually a really nice house. I would love to live in that. She counted more than 30 rings since it's been more than 30 rings, bro. I counted like 50. The caller either had a lot of free time on their hands or had a good understanding of the house's circumstances. She had a strong hunch that it was the latter. The window above looked out onto a gloomy sky. She hastened to catch the unrelenting ring and the act as soon as possible. Throughout, she had a feeling that her happy morning might come to a close the moment she caught it. How should I play this game? Should I do it in parts? Like by chapters? It was here that a series of incidents began. Apologies for the lack of romance. So it's not a romance. Apologies for the lack of romance to this tale. Fate Stay Night had a little bit of romance. A limited blade work had a happy ending. Same for Heavensfield, had a happy ending. For whether it be objectively true or merely supposition, it is always from gloomy and unassuming beginnings that extraordinary events are set in motion. What does Y do? It's the save button. Is that the opening? The fuck? Did I skip it? I skipped it. Alright, we're back. Okay, so now I know what those fingers do. Okay, now we know what those triggers are gonna do. Nasu. Takeshi Takuichi Kinoku Nasu. So the plan is to play this before Witch of the Holy Night comes out. Witch of the Holy Night. The plan is to beat Witch on the Holy Night before the Tsukihime remake comes out. I've never played Tsukihime. I just know of it, and I've seen a few like playthroughs. But it was so out of order, it's like I don't even know what the game was about. So I don't know if it's like a one scenario, if it has different endings, and whatnot. I remember playing the original Fate Stay Night novel. Well, the visual novel. It was like the fan translation. Never beat it though. It was so long. There's so much dialogue in that game. It was fun. so cool. That's a screenshot right there. Oh, I see. That's not how it goes. Music, Hideaki Fukusawa, Keita Haga. I love the music already. It's so good. No, 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 no. Iyuru? Iyuru. Are they like just building the town, or what's going on here? Oh, we got heavy construction going on the outskirts of Japan, or what? Is that sus or no? I see different umbrellas. We got red, we got blue. What other primary colors? Where's yellow? Is this important? No? Damn. It looks so cool, dude. So that's where she lives? Man, I need an OLED monitor, bro. I feel like the colors will pop out more. Should I just kind of lay back? I think I should. Witch on the Holy Night. Wow, I've actually been saying it wrong before. I thought it was Witch of the Holy Night. It's Witch on the Holy Night. And not KN, it's just NI. Okay. So it's a different type of night. The rain had subsided somewhat by the time she reached the school gate. Sunlight seemed to be playing peekaboo behind the clouds in the distance. It looked like it might be cleared up by early afternoon. Not that it had anything to do with me, though. The weather reflected her luck. Wait, so what did X do? Or is that just a skip button? Oh, B doesn't go back? Oh, it hides the text. On top of being forced out of the house at such an early hour, she had no... She had to suffer through a winter rain. I'm getting a bad feeling about this. The sinking feeling she had only grew as she passed through the entrance and headed inside. She didn't encounter any other students along the way, nor did she see anyone taking part in club activities either. The reception desk to the facility room simply read, "Facility closed." Oh, faculty, not facility. Faculty closed. The school had given all of its students the day off, except those explicitly summoned like her, a fact that irked her more and more as the minutes passed. She opened the door to the faculty room and headed toward the desk she had visited a number of times before. The man at the desk wore a plain shirt and suit that were nonetheless neatly pressed. Slim framed glasses adorned his face, giving off an amicable yet cunning air. The mild-mannered image this mid-twenties man presented clashed with the cigarette he smoked. He didn't appear to have noticed her yet. What, her teacher? Mr. Yamashiro? She closed the door with a bang. Showing no response to the sudden sound, Mr. Yoshida had lifted his head.
Yeah. Ohayo, Aozaki-kun.
So he's like the bad guy, like in Fate Stay Night? Right? Does he summon Casper? Is this where it came from? Hey there, good morning, Miss... What? Ayozaki? I guess it means you got the call. Yes, they called me at home about an hour ago. Out of the blue. Like the Tsukihime game, right? A Passage of the Blue Moon. I understood that reference. Having graduated from this high school himself, Mr. Yamashiro was not much older than the rest of the students. He was just like a senpai. For that reason, the students preferred him over the other teachers. He always had something interesting to talk about and kept conversations casual. In fact, he seemed more like an older student than a teacher, but she unfortunately didn't share her fellow students' fondness for him. I want it louder. I'm gonna turn the volume down just a smidge. I think that's good. She was out of options that teachers should come across as more austere, like an iron fist that could inspire both love and hate in equal measure. Not a buddy to joke and pal around with. He was the exact opposite of how she felt a teacher should be. It was only natural that her manner towards him would be forced and unfriendly. Not that she'd even be wired to make friendly small talk. You're in a found mood today? Today, I'm like this every day. The matter of fact answer perfectly matched the displeasure displayed on her face. Her bad mood for having to get up early and tiredness from staying up late must have collectively made her look positively adversarial. If you say so, just go easy on her guest, okay? Yes. To be honest, we're not completely sure how to deal with him yet. What, Shiro? Is Shiro here? Are we getting the Shiro equivalent of him? About that, do you want to tell me what the hell is going on, because I have no clue. Ah, Mr. Yamashiro met her piercing eyes. He finally understood the reason behind her tone and slowly put out his cigarette. Let's start at the beginning. What did they tell you over the phone? Just that I'd be introduced to transfer student. They were a little hazy on the rest though. One that Mr. Yamashiro's eyebrows stood up, impressed with the brevity of her answer. He could see that she was angry not because she had been called to school on her day off, but because she hadn't been told why she was here. Mr. Yamashiro chuckled sympathetically. If this was all a joke to you, perhaps I should just go home. He's gonna be like, no, don't do that. Wait. I didn't mean to laugh. This is not a practical joke. We could really use your help. So there really is a transfer student. Yes. Yes, but he was, how should I put it? Difficult circumstances. His name is... It's almost like Shiro. So his name is Sojuro? Sojuro. Yeah, so his name is Sojuro and he's a bit peculiar. So we thought someone around the same age would be best suited to show him the ropes. What are we dealing with? She threw him an unamused look. It was negligent on them to be pushing teaching duties on her, but she wondered how exactly the transfer student was peculiar. Maybe he meant the student had behavior problems or was difficult somehow. But peculiar, she didn't have the slightest idea what that meant. You don't hear a teacher calling someone that every day. She had her doubts but swept them aside for now. This wasn't the time to get distracted by more concerns. The fact remained that this conversation was all the peculiar she could handle, and she needed more information. She was already beginning to fantasize about saying no and curling up in her warm bed at home. I have a question. Yes, and he's a second-year student like you. He's well-behaved and good listener. He's not the most energetic individual. Should I read while we're talking? But that just means he'll be easier to get along with, right? He's not in the same homeroom class as you. But I'm sure you'll get along just well. I'll be the judge of that when I actually meet him. And none of that answered my question. Why me? Though her tone was still stern, it was clear that she was willing to cooperate. She had decided to put her feelings of dissatisfaction aside and focus on the task at hand. Forcing herself to act empathetic in spite of her self-absorbed nature was something she was used to. Paradoxically, this force of will was also the reason teachers put so much faith in her. To a point, at times that strength shattered expectation, and on those occasions they were left with no choice but to treat it like a natural disaster and weather it until it passed. That was how Mr. Yamashiro had come to deal with her as over the past year. I'll ask you one more time, Mr. Yamashiro. Why does it have to do with me? Because you're the protag. You're the main heroine. Come on. Persuaded by a question without a clear yes or no answer, he answered. Well, about that. I wonder what her persona is like. Is it more like Rin, or what are we talking about here? Well, about that.
青
You're
崎く
probably
んが
thinking
先
it's
生方に
because
提
you're
案さ
the
れているのと同じぐらい
iron-fisted
信
ruler
頼
of
さ
the
れてい
student
て、
council and are
学校
willing
の
to
ためなら
strike down
教
both
師も
teacher
生
and
徒も一
student
緒くたに切って捨てる鉄の生徒会長だからじゃないよ。
for the good of the school, but you'd be wrong.
それ以外にこんな呼びつけを受ける理由は
I
ないと
cannot
思いますけ
imagine
ど。
any other reason you'd call me. Her eyes did nothing to hide her disbelief as she glared at him. Strength far beyond that of an ordinary 17-year-old girl, coupled with the youthful beauty of one. Mr. Yamashiro let slip a genuine smile, admiring the miraculous balance of qualities.
いや、責務だけでいいなら僕がやって
I
るさ。
mean, I'd handle this myself if it was just a pure
教師や生
obligation,
徒
but
会
who
長といった
gets
役
this
職に
job
関
has
係
nothing
な
to
い
do
よ。
with whether they're teacher or the student
な
council.
んていうか、
I
こん
just
な
felt
頼
that
みを
you were the
損得
only
抜
one
きで
who
聞いてくれるの
entertained
は
this kind of
君だけ
request
だと思う
without
んだよ。
needing to weigh all sides.
適任ですから
That's why I
と
insisted
強く
it be
推
with
薦した
you.
わけ。
In other words, he knew she wouldn't say no.
山城先生。
Mr. Yamashiro.
うわ、怖
Oh
っ。
dear, would you
も
stop
う
glaring at me
睨ま
like
ない
that
睨ま
already?
ない。言ったろ
At least put on a
僕にはとも
smile
か
for
く
your new
彼に
schoolmate.
はとまあ納得してく
Look,
れ
if
た
you're
なら
agreeing to help, we should
す
go
ぐに移
see
動し
him.
よ
We already kept
う。
him
もう
waiting
随分
long
待た
enough
せて
as
しま
it
っているから
is.
ね。それと
And
雨の日
because you
だからこ
braved
そ
the rain to get here, I'd
帰
be
りはも
happy
ち
to
ろん
give you a
お
ride
前を送
home.
るよ。
Where are we going? Mr. Yamashiro stood up gracefully. I'm good, thanks, she replied before turning and walking out of the faculty room. He had been waiting for about an hour. Oh, so this is the guy? While he did, the rain shower lightened into a drizzle. His mind wandered as he listened to the sound of the raindrops. The room was filled with neatly arranged rectangular tables. He was the only one there. Quite some time had passed since he had been brought to this room and asked to wait. Even the best behaved students might have grown dissatisfied or anxious with the situation by now. But that boy, to his spot, he stuck to his spot like a what? Like a screwdriver? Oh, like a scarecrow. He was chilled to the bone. It was the end of November at the low temperature in the morning had marked the start of winter. The room was not much warmer. The heater hadn't been turned on. Either he'd missed the teacher telling him to turn it on, or he'd never seen one in his life. Oh, just like how Shiro fixed the heater in Fate Stay Night in the Middle Bay Works. I understood that reference. Ho ho. He breathed lightly on his freezing fingers as he aimlessly surveyed his surroundings. This dreary place was apparently a meeting room. The other students might have considered it a wonderful place to meet, but to him it was a drab and overly spacious. What, is he used to like more confined spots? It was a lifeless place that reminded him of a narrow cave. Stuck in the cold room with absolutely nothing to do, his mind turned to what they wanted to discuss. Like what? Hmm. Tell me about it, bro. I relate. Unable to come up with a solid answer, he returned his attention to the sound of rain. The rain hardly resembled the rain in the mountains, though he could still recognize it barely. Its its smell and sound were harsher, but at the end of the day, rain was still rain. So even this world, alien as it was, how is this an alien world to him? So even this world, alien as it was, could have something in common with the mountains. The trivial detail perked him up a little. He liked how the town looked soaked in rain. Naturally, he preferred sunny weather. He liked rain in its own way. The fog from the rain had soaked up the scent of soil and reminded him of home. Oh, I love the smell of rain. It was at times like these that he was able to numb the anxiety of the city gave him. Is he not from the city? But then he let out a discouraged sigh. How pathetic. He'd already been here 2 weeks, and thoughts of his hometown was still. Oh, he's sad. He's homesick, and thought of his hometown still made him sad. Perhaps feeling that he was being unfair to his new life, he composed himself and continued to wait patiently. That's the protag. Why does he have that around his neck? As if having a passion for distractions, his attention returned to the sound of rain once more. Waiting like this didn't seem to be particularly hard for him. He quietly endured the numbing cold and the hour alone with calm, deep breaths. As the saying goes, good things come to those who wait. A strong point of his or not, he was astonishingly patient. It was certainly helping him out in this moment. That's a cool shot. She, on the other hand, was livid. Why? The profile of the transfer students had been explained to her on the way to the meeting room. She was told he had lived his whole life up in the mountains without no how. Without electricity, I wouldn't even be able to play this game. She was told he had lived his whole life in the mountains without any electricity. That meant more than half of civilized society would have been a utter mystery to
なんて
him.
絶望
What,
的な断絶
what a
そ
miserable
の
level of
男全然
isolation.
の話じゃ
How
な
is
い
this possible in post-war
人相も
Japan?
程がある
He's like, I don't understand. I don't understand the reference. He's like Robertson Crusoe? Crusoe? She had every right to be. Why is she angry? His village has apparently remained isolated in the mountains for many years. Contact with villages in the foothills of the mountains only occurred once a month or so, which was unfathomable in modern Japan. Although expressways in Japan Rail, the old national railways, now span the country like arteries, it wasn't entirely impossible for mountain villages like this to exist, or like his to exist. Near Automata, I understood that reference, to be. But she couldn't imagine how someone born to such circumstances would think or live.
電気がないって
When you say no
村
electricity,
に
you
行
mean
き
in
渡って
general,
いない
right?
だけで公衆
Like he
電話
must
ぐ
have
らい
had
はあっ
access
たん
to
で
a
すよね
public phone? Oh, no phones?
なかったそうだよ。
Apparently not. He mentioned
こっ
how
ちに暮
shocked he
らすよ
was
うに
by
なっ
the
て
phones when he
まず
started
驚
living
いたの
here.
が電話って便利です
I
ね
kid you not,
な
he
んて
said,
真
wow,
顔で言われて
telephones are so
ね
useful.
それもそうだなぁと再確認させられたぐらいだよ
Couldn't really deny that, could I? She shot a sidelong glare his way as he laughed. It seemed that the what? It seemed that the naivety of the country boy had cheered up Mr. Yamashiro to a bit.
駐在もい
They
ないってこ
probably
と
didn't have
か
police officers either.
うちも実家は山奥ですから電気が通っていないの
My
はありえな
family
いとは
home
言いま
is
せん
up
け
in the
ど
mountains, so it's not inconceivable they wouldn't have electricity.
そいつ
But he
学
doesn't
校を
even
知
know
ら
what
ないんです
school
か
is.
うん
Nope.
どんなも
He'd
のか
heard
は
of
知っ
them,
てい
but
たそう
this
だ
is
けど
apparently his first time
実
visiting
際
one.
来るのは今
Maybe
日が
that's
初
why
めて
he's
だし
nervous. He wasn't
う
very
ん
talkative.
ああいうのも野
He's
生児っ
almost
て
you
いうの
would
か
call
な
what?
狼に育てられ
He's
た
almost
狼
what you
少年
would call
みたい
it
な
feral?
いや探検隊の話だね
Like a boy raised by wolves, I suppose that makes up Lewis and Clark? Oh, Lois and Clark.
ちょ
Hey, you're
怖い
scaring
な
me,
尾崎君
Iozaki. I was
冗
joking. Go
談
easy,
冗
okay?
談だって大丈夫
And
話して
don't
みた
worry,
感
I
じ
got the feeling from
おとな
talking
しい
to
子だ
him
った
that
か
he's a nice kid.
なんていうか
He was almost like,
言
I
葉
don't
の通
know,
じない小
a
動
cute
物
little
みたいな
animal
感
that
じ
doesn't speak human.
山城先
Your
生
jokes and
その
metaphors
例
aren't
え
helping.
気休めになってませんから
As she gave her blunt reply, she tried to simulate in her mind what life without electricity would be like, but thought of it took her sour mood from bad to worse. After all, it was a world she had never known. She could understand why the teachers had given up. She too wanted to give up and return to her warm bed. Oh, because she was woken up. But her good-for-nothing pride was hurling her hostage. Ooh, that's gonna come to bite her later in this visual novel, huh? But her good-for-nothing pride was holding her hostage. Yeah, that sounds a little bit like foreshadowing. Not only did the teachers believe she was up to the task, but she'd also believed she could do it. It wasn't that easy to go back on her word, no matter how bad things looked after the fact. Yeah, that's gonna come bite her later. She walked along the hallway, the rain pattering in the background. The meeting room was already in sight. With a furrowed brow, she fixed her long hair in anticipation of meeting the unknown stranger within. Her elegant strides were like those of a confident general going into battle.
いや青崎君
Iozaki?
君を信
I
頼してる
believe in
僕
you
だ
and
け
all,
ど
boss said again. Be
念
nice,
のため
okay?
確
Can
認
you
して
at
おく
least try
よ
to smile?
作り笑いは苦手
I'm
で
bad
す
at faking smiles, but I'll
一
do
応
my
努力して
best.
いるつもりですが
あそう
Really?
なんだ
That's a relief.
いや
I
本当よか
really
っ
mean it.
た
It's good to know you're
青
not
崎
good
君
at
にも苦手
everything.
なものってあったんだね
It's good to know that she's bad at things. Mr. Yamashita's shoulders slumped the second they reached the meeting room. As he put his hand to the door, his eyes seemed to say to her, "Be nice, please." This only made her more irritated. Is she gonna be mad when she walks in?
愛
I
想が
already
悪いん
know
で
I'm
も
not that
でも
friendliest
笑顔
looking
なん
person
て
in the
意識
world,
し
but I
て
can't
作る
just
ものじ
make
ゃないん
myself
だし
smile at the drop of a hat. Tell me about it.
大体そういうインスタントな人付き合いなら飛び
You
丸
should
の方
have
が向
asked
いてるって
Tobimaro if that was what you were after. She sighed about her social shortcomings, but then it occurred to her that being called into school on a day off while sleep deprived wasn't anything to smile about anyway. She also thought this person responsible for this mess would be better off attending elementary school. What? It might not be his fault, but neither was it her duty or obligation to do the teacher's work for them. At the very least, they could have used their brains and organized all this on a normal school day. Another complaint she wanted to voice later. Ooh,
とい
I
うの
hate him.
敵
She hasn't
何
even
の
met
野
him and
郎
he's
の
already
敵
mad. I hate him already.
上場酌量以前に敵
He's my sworn enemy. I haven't even met him. Sorry, but I couldn't care less about his extenuating
間が
circumstances.
悪いのはお
You think
互い
this
様っ
isn't
ていう
awkward
か
for me too? Honestly, why
と
did this have to
なん
happen
で
when
より
I'm
に
so
もよって
busy?
こんな忙しい時に
Busy what? Sleeping? Her pondering headache from the lack her pondering headache from the lack of sleep have boosted her aggression by 10%. No matter how harmless the guy on the other side of the door may be, anyone who disturbed her sleep was the enemy. Sounds like somebody I know. And just as she was reaching peak annoyance, Mr. Yamashiro opened the door to the meeting room. The room slowly slid into view. She didn't care for formalities. Just looked straight ahead and stormed into the room, and found herself face to face with the most unusual opponent. Wait, how is he an opponent? Before we go on, are we going back? Before we go on, let's see from another perspective. Turning back the clock just a little. You don't have to do anything. For some, these words are a priceless luxury. For others, they are unbearable torture. We're back with him. For the protective girl, it was definitely the former, though she'd be too suspicious of the motives of anyone giving her such a gift to accept. For the passive boy, it was definitely the latter, a bitter thorn that made him homesick, though at this very moment his mind was still distracted with the wait for his face to reveal discomfort. Did I read discomfort? Discontent. Discontent. He maintained perfect posture as he stared at the gray sky. He had already waited a whole hour, but she kept him waiting that long. He had already waited a whole hour, but figured they must have had their reasons for making him wait. And as long as he had sound of rain to soothe him, he could keep on waiting.
でも
It
そろ
must
そ
be
ろ
9
9時を
o'clock
過ぎるの
already.
か
Yeah, that seems about right. He had been vaguely keeping track of the time as he listened to the rain. Due to the holiday, the school building was completely silent, except for the patter of the rain on the window. Ah, that's such a vibe. The mood felt as damp as the rain. That's the screenshot. It was then. He heard the heavy clatter of footsteps
分かった
approaching. Finally,
追
I
い先
thought
ら
they'd
れて変だ
forgotten
と思っ
about
た
me. He could hear two sets of footsteps, one heavier, so belonging to an adult. He breathed a sigh of relief as the door slid open.
すまないね
So
ずいぶ
sorry
ん
to
とお
keep you
待たせしちゃ
waiting.
って
The first person he saw was a man wearing glasses as an awkward smile. That's Mr. Yamashiro, the one who brought me
で
here.
あれ
Huh?
里
Where's
中先生いないん
Mr.
ですか
Satonaka? I told him to keep you company.
ひどい
Who?
な
He shouldn't have left you here. Mr. Yamashiro scratched his head, looking increasingly apologetic, and then from behind him, bah, bah, with a tight-lipped expression that made it clear she didn't want to be there, a dark-haired girl with a determined look in her eyes appeared. Love at first sight. How is this not a love tale? This is already a love story. Dang, look at that. They're already in love. They're already. Why haven't we seen her face yet? Love at first sight. Sojiro gulped. The sound of the rain on the window faded into nothing. That's love at first sight. That's when he knew. This was how it felt when time stood still. Oh, he's in love. That's a screenshot. She's also in love. She blinked quickly a few times, that is, was taken aback. Why was anyone's guess? The boy was everything she expected a naive country boy to look like. However, she felt something she couldn't understand. Like what? What, the bandages around his neck? Was his lelouch hiding the chaos? What's going on? His eyes widened slightly as if taken aback. The reason was obvious. Putting his feelings into words was a difficult matter altogether. So we will never know exactly what he experienced in that moment. That's when it hit him. He sensed he'd been touched by the hands of destiny.
紹介するよ
Allow me to
彼が
introduce the
転
two
入
of
生
you.
の
This is the
静
transfer
瀬
student
宗
I
次郎君
mentioned. Sojiro Shizuki.
で、こっちの
And
彼
this
女
is
が
the girl that
日
we'd
付
be
県
showing
の
you
案内
around.
役。うちの生徒会長で
She's our student
休
council
日をして
president and came
新
in
し
on
い
her
仲
day
間の
off
案
just
内
to
役
welcome
を
you.
買って出てくれた青崎青子くんだ。
Ayozaki Ako? Her name is Ayozaki Ako, or Ako Ayozaki. Ako Ayozaki. His voice and the sound of the rain seem distant. This is how they first met. Ooh, this is definitely a love story. Such was their start, for better or worse, like an what? Like the ephemeral beauty of fireworks. And now we can hear the rain again. It was commonly believed among the students that Ayoko was always in a foul mood, but this gossip was 90% prejudice, as Ayoko simply didn't have the time to be irritated 24/7. The reality was she what? The reality was she simply didn't want to explain herself all the time, and therefore seemed angry about something obvious or not. This ideal gossip did, however, lead her to earning the title of one of the school's 7 deadly threats. The remaining 10% of the gossip was right on the mark. Ako herself often had the feeling that her tendency to feel animosity toward harmless things was akin to what a chronic headache sufferer might experience. Today fell under the 10%. And her childish for today her anger was pure, and her childish and selfish displays was befitting of her actual age. The meeting room was dimly lit, awash with the colors of the rain. To reduce electricity costs, the school regulations forbid the use of lights during the day. This was the setting the three of them found themselves in. Her first impression was that he had calm demeanor, reminded her of a field of wildflowers. In spite of his perfect posture, he seemed subdued and fragile, and thought describing him as meek would be going too far. At the very least, he was passive. Even through his uniform, she could see that he was thinner than average. His dark hair was unkept, and he had came across as a wholly forgettable boy. If she had to look at him in a more positive light, she would describe him more a young man than a boy. It was his calm demeanor that made him seem more mature. Was that the cause of Akko's reasonless reaction? He seemed almost too at home in the meeting room, and she was left with the impression that it was her and the teacher, not this outsider, who were the guests here. She felt an unidentifiable aggravation building up within her, almost as if her right to be here was in question. Akko felt herself raising her natural defenses. Why am I losing my voice? What's with me? Am I really this angry for no reason? That's her anger face? She hated not understanding things, her own emotions in particular. It pained her less that you would imagine for perfectionists like her, but it still nagged her like a thorn in her
い
side.
や
Ah haha, Ayozaki, why
ほ
don't
ら
you introduce
青崎く
yourself?
ん挨拶してあげなくちゃ。
Mr. Yamashiro's attempt to realize the tension was equally irritating.
挨拶
Introduce myself, huh? After casting a nasty glance in the teacher's direction, Aqua turned to face the boy. From an outsider's perspective, it might have looked at a stare down. And in that instant, the culmination of her emotional state hurled towards that innocent boy and skewered him. I'm losing my voice. It's too early for this, bro.
いや待たせたね。
Again, sorry for
鈴木
the
君
wait, Suzuki. Hearing his name, Sojiro came to his senses. His stunned gaze shook less. He took a deep breath to clear his mind. Chalking it up to the nerves, Mr. Yamashiro broke out a smile and turned to the girl standing beside him.
紹介す
Beside
る
him.
よ。
I'll do an
彼が
introduction
転
to
入
him.
生の
This is a
静
transfer
木総次
student,
郎君
Sojiro Suzuki.
で、こっ
And
ち
this
の
is our
彼女
student
が
council
静
president
木
who
君の
came
案
in
内
on her
役。
day off just to show
う
you
ちの
around.
生徒会長で休日をして新しい仲間の案
Her
内役
name
を買って出てくれた
is
青崎青子くんだ。
Ayozaki Aoko. Having been introduced by Mr. Yamashiro, the girl took a step forward. Her eyes were merciless. Her stare an unspoken threat to violently trample her opponent. Soldier, on the other hand, managed to keep his own composure despite the shock at how confrontational she appeared. He had never been greeted quite like this before, but supposed mistakenly that this was how people treated each other in the city. The exchange must have looked quite dramatic to an onlooker. A girl ready to brawl. An earnest country boy desperate to understand. It was a murderer's limbo, especially for anyone in the room with them. Like Mr. Yamashiro, for example, while he had thought he had made the right decision in choosing an honor student to help him out, she was in inexplicably bad mood, and the tension in the air was undeniable. It was in this moment that he realized his failure. His realization had come far too late. One false move and this girl from whom had no problem was too large would become a storm that would rock the very foundations of the school. Just as the almighty Joker card could bring either fortune or disaster, the sole teacher who had been present at the time would come to bear the blame for the scandal that ensued. Wow, you two really seem to have hit it
それ
off.
じゃあ
I
僕は
suppose
こ
I
の
can
辺
leave
で
you
いい
two
か
to
な
it then. Mr. Yamashiro left nervously as he crept towards the door. That's a really good song. Dun dun dun. Ooh, that's a good song. Oh, please tell me I can just hear the music in this game later.
僕は職員室にいるか
I'll
ら
be in the
終わっ
faculty
たら来る
room.
ように
Stop by when you're finished.
いいかい青崎くん
You'll be alright, won't you, Aozaki?
なんていうか
You're the
生徒会
the
長とし
look.
ての度量の
You're
広
the
さを
student council
ぜひ
president.
僕
Don't
に
let me
信じ
down.
させてほしいかな
Okay, Google max brightness. That barely did anything. Mr. Yamashiro lived in two in a locked-eyed state, one of which set of eyes was doing all the glaring. All that remained in the room was a naive boy. And a cross-armed guarded girl. Why does he have those bandages? The two lingered in silence. They resembled shogi players agonizing over the first move, though ultimately it was only Akko that I considered the scene carefully. The other dude just so unbothered. She decided to put irritation aside for the time being. With no reason to feel revulsion for him in the first place, she sighed deeply and faced Sojiro.
まあいいわ
Whatever, it's not
山
like
城
this is
先
the
生が
first
振
time
る
Mr.
舞うんだも
Yamashiro
ん
landed me
今
in
に
it.
始まったことじゃないし
Mr. Yamashiro landed me it.
それで
So,
あなた
what's your
名
name
前は
again? Her tone was nothing if not reproachful, though he had done nothing to offend her. But the boy failed to pick up on it. Incapable of such venom himself,
ああ静木
I'm
総十郎だ
Sojiro Suzuki,
君は
he
青崎さんだっ
replied,
たね
and you're Miss Ayozaki, right? For whatever reason, he came across as happy in response.
さんはいいわ
Drop the mist, that's not my
こっちは
style.
静木くんでいい
Is Suzuki fine? Whatever do you mean?
だから呼び方
What do you mean, what do I mean?
何よ
Hello, did I say something weird?
私
いや
Yeah, very. The boy replied immediately as if it was a natural response, but quickly second-guessed himself.
いやいいんだ
Never mind, that would be normal here.
静木くんで頼む
You can call me Suzuki, you mind if I call you Ayozaki? No.
よろしく
Oh, suit yourself. She followed her blunt reply with a stiff turn away from him. While she was hardly thrilled at the prospect of the task at hand, it had been entrusted to her, and it was her personal policy to see it through to the end.
悪いけど
Sorry,
優しく
but
して
I'm
あ
not
げ
in
る
a good
気は
mood
ない
for
から
pleasantries.
時間も惜しいし
Time is short, so let's get this over with.
それは助かる
Sure, I know your
やっぱ
time
り
is
時間は大
valuable.
切だ
Aqua's blunt rancor was lost on him once again. Why is she bothered? Humans tend to be overly conscious about being ignored, whatever form that takes. But despite being peeved at landing none of her attacks, Aqua did her best to act professional and directed her guest into the hallway. How did that get her mad? There was no silence in the hallway nor any sign of life. This was more like a prison than a cave that was a meeting room. As it dawned on Aqua that the hallway matched her mood, she sighed once again.
まず聞いておくけど
First things first, did you understand everything Mr. Yamashiro explained to you?
ああ
Yes,
この
I
仕
get
組
how
みに
the
ついて
school
は
works.
この建物全部
But
に
it's still a
同
bit
じ
hard to
人間がい
imagine
る
that
なんて
everyone here is around
ちょ
the
っと
same
想像
age.
できないけど
そうよかった
I
わ
see, great. Aqua rubbed her forehead. This Sojiro kid had no idea what he was in for. Apparently all he heard about the school was it was a place where a lot of people met to study. High school teachers imparted to the students their knowledge in various fields of study while fostering discipline and creativity. But never did Aqua imagine that she would have to explain the concepts of school itself to someone, Yes, fundamentals were important, but this was absurd. She had serious doubts whether he could handle classes, but Mr. Yamashiro insisted that things would work out somehow. Sojiro has managed to pass his transfer exam after all, barely.
私には
Not my
関係ないけど
problem. What a motto to live by. Akko grumbled mentally as she walked down the hallway. She consoled herself with the fact that today would be the only day she spent with this boy out of time, or at least she tried to keep it that way. Zaki? He asked calmly, trying to get her attention. What? Can I ask you something?
だから何
Yeah, what is it? She just wants to go back to bed. I could be I could be wrong about this, but you seem upset about something. You're not a morning person. He's doing the Shinji look when he's confused. He's like drinking his coffee. You're not a morning person, are you? His gaze revealed earnest concern as if something as if asking her if she resembled what? As she remembered to eat breakfast. That's a funny face. It was like another hammer to her head. What is that face? It was true that Akko had been glaring at Sojiro the entire time. Glaring red-hot daggers, in fact, not just at him, but the universe. Even on her best days, her roommate used to remark.
青子の視線は普通の人には厳しいわ
So the roommate is the calmer person. Most people can't handle your scowl, Akko.
もう少し
It wouldn't hurt you a little to be more tolerant. She'd been warned that her emotions were so naked on her face that people treated her like a powder keg? Like a powder keg? How naive could the boy be that he could not pick up on this?
私をバカにして
He's not making fun of me, is
る
he?
わけじゃなさそう
No, he couldn't be. Huh? Even she found her own attempt to reassure herself unconvincing. It began to dawn on Akko far too late that compared to her, this laid-back transfer student might as well been from another planet.
いいわ
Look,
言葉にし
let
な
me
いと
spell
わ
it
から
out
な
for
い
you
ようだから
because
言うけど
you're just not
あ
getting
な
it.
たの気のせいじゃ
It's
な
not
くて
your imagination. I am
私を視
angry,
線で遠回しに
and
感情を
anyone
表
can
現
see
して
that
た
in my eyes. It's easier than trying to make conversation. In response to her words, the what? The Martian clapped his hands together. Or the Martin?
どうしてそうしたいのかは分
This
からない
makes
が
oh the
確か
Martian.
にそっちの方
That
が
makes
手っ取り
sense. I
早
don't
い
know
意思
why
表
you'd
現
want
だ
to do it that way, but I guess this faster way to express herself. Sojiro accepted her reasoning without argument. Though he still had no idea what kinds of emotions she was trying to express, it was as if he could hear the words but didn't grasp the meanings. Ideas that should have been connected were instead separated into blocks.
確かにずれて
So it's true, he really is peculiar. Mr. Yamashiro's words made sense to her now. What was odd about this boy was beyond naivety. A stranger in a strange land he may be, but it was only civilized to forgive him some jet-lag induced confusion.
じゃ
Let's
と
visit
りあ
your
えずあなた
classroom.
の教室に行くから
She had regained her composure. Sojiro raised his hand and stepped on his tracks.
ああと一つ
Just one moment. Just one more thing. Akko waited for Sojiro to continue. The boy was patient to a fault. She rubbed her forehead with her hand again, nursing a vague feeling of uneasiness.
これもちょっとした疑問
I
なんだ
wanted to
が
ask you, why are you so
なんで君は怒ってるんだ
Why are you so angry? Is your line of business or does it run in your family? A long silence, though she knew it wouldn't change the situation. She remembered her regret at answering the phone that morning. He meant no harm. She repeated this thought like a what? Like a mantra in an attempt to keep her impulses in check.
別にあなたのせいじゃない
It's,
から
it's not
気にする
you
必要は
if
ない
that's
わ
what you're worried
た
about.
だ
I'd just
この一
rather
瞬
be
と
somewhere else right now. With that vague answer, she started to walk again and turned her gaze away from this rude stranger named Sojiro Suzuki. While what constitutes normal is certainly up for debate, most would undoubtedly refer to him as so. He was a simple and nice boy with nondescript features. If he were an ice cream flavor, he would be vanilla. What a quote. If he were an ice cream flavor, he would be vanilla. And she would be what? And Sojiro found Akko to be very businesslike and full of life. There was a certain purpose to her movements, as they began and ended in ordinary fashion. The way her finger raised when she pointed at things. The way she made her way across the hallways and classrooms. The way she would occasionally glance back at him to make sure he was keeping peace. Each and every moment was so impressive that he couldn't take his eyes off her. Oh, he's definitely in love. Akko showed him to his classroom, Class C of the 11th grade. The room certainly displayed more of a human touch than the previous meeting room, but Sojiro was none the wiser as to its functions. Akko gave a brief explanation before they visited individual subject classrooms, as well as the gym, cafeteria, locker room, and school infirmary. Sojiro asked so many questions that much time passed before they reached the AV room on the second floor. Oh dear, look at the time. Sojiro stopped looking genuinely concerned. It's 20 to 1 already. Oh, it's over? Huh? You're kidding, right? The school isn't that big. We'll be done soon. The tour had just begun around 10, which meant that 3 hours had passed. Damn, it's been a long time. A tour of a school shouldn't take anywhere near this long. Maybe if it didn't have so many questions, we'd be done by now. It's a miracle it's still light out. Akko glared at Sojiro. She was being sarcastic, of course, knowing full well he would never pick up on it. Is he? To her surprise, he looked down apologetically, unable to hide his dejection. Oops, I think I broke him. The guy before her now was nothing like earlier, in contrast to seeing his once impenetrable veneer when they first met. She found herself feeling sympathetic. Momentarily, at least, until her irritation returned in full force. What's the hurry? Don't tell me your brain's not that big enough to remember all this stuff. Well, there's that, but it's more about it's almost being 1 o'clock. Sojiro's gaze wandered off as if worried about something. Sojiro. If he was worried about the weather, he would have a hard time seeing as if there was no windows in the hallway. Don't tell me you've got somewhere to be. Someone better to be. That's perfect. I take time of day for you and you don't have the decency to even hang around. You're a real piece of work, you know that? What is that face, dude? Thanks. I guess that's nice of you to say. That's a funny face. Not a compliment. She yelled at him, unable to hold back her fury. Well? Well, what? What's happening in 20 minutes? Sojiro's face lit up as he finally understood what she was asking him. It's a secret. Training for magic, bro. He said with a perfectly straight face. Every time I think I've got this guy figured out, he finds a way to trip me up. Her frustration was natural. Still, she did everything she could to stifle her feelings and fake a smile. You want to repeat that, Shizuki? She took a step forward. Like I said, it's a secret. Feeling the mood change drastically, Sojiro took a step back. and another. No matter how many steps he took back she kept edging toward him. She was smiling, but he thought he could see the blood boiling beneath her skin. Last question. Do you enjoy mocking me? He had no intention of mocking her, though at this point he doubted presenting any evidence to prove this would be much to erase that forced smile of her. Let me explain. Yeah, let me break it down for you. His arm was raised in surrender. She halted her advance and freed her from the unseemly smile. The truth is that my part-time shift starts at 1, but the students aren't allowed to have jobs, right? Yeah, wait, were you being tight-lipped because you thought you'd get in trouble? All you have to do is get permission, dweeb. I know, and I did. I got permission when they accepted me to the school. Really? Akko's face lit up as she realized he might be a nice piece of work. What? Akko's face lit up as she realized he might not be the piece of work she thought him to be. Yeah? But I only got permission for one of my jobs. He has more than one? Wait, you have more than one job? Well, I quit. He had 3 jobs and go to school? Living expenses are bad enough, but now I have to earn money for school as well. Don't you think it's unreasonable of them only to let me work one job? No, I think you're the one who's being unreasonable. Though she still so irritated, her opinion of him changed a little. Oh, I think she was impressed that he was able to take care of his tuition and living expenses all on his own. She could also empathize with having no time to oneself. Her anger began to subside. The words part-time job were about the last thing she could ever expected to hear out of this country boy's mouth. Well, you gotta do what you gotta do, I guess. It's fine, you can go now. I get it. Will you be okay? Yeah, she's just going back to bed. She had no idea what his question meant, but she at least understood he was trying to be considerate, which also took her by surprise. She figured he'd just be as dense as people's feelings as he was about everything else. I'll be fine. I'll just head home. First though, she thought it'd be best that they both stood by the faculty room. Mr. Yamashiro had mentioned that the transfer procedures had already been completed, so all that reminded her was for him to sign off on her duties. I finished showing him around. Sensei. Oh, great job. That goes for you too, Suzuki. What did you think of her school? Thank you for the tour. It's like it is a real school. That's great to hear. Okay then, best of luck starting tomorrow. She had no interest whatsoever. I finished showing him around. Great job. That goes for you too, Suzuki. What did you think of the school? Thank you for the tour. Did I rewind? I hit L2. Ha, that's great to hear. Okay then, best of luck starting tomorrow. She had no interest whatsoever in this pointless wrap-up meeting. You'll have to forgive Mr. Yamashiro. He likes the faculty room so much he chooses to sit back there while getting his students to do his dirty work for him. I bet he spends hours in there. Actually, that's pretty smart of him. Okay, Aozaki, if you're fine with that, then so am I. Huh? There it was again. Whatever Sojiro was getting at, Ako had no idea. I'm going to get going. Thanks again for today. Yes, today only. She shooed him away with her hand. His face bent in a broad smile as if he found the gestures endearing. It was the soft expression that she had grown accustomed to seeing him out of him. It was the kind of smile that would make anyone smile back. She smiled back? Well, most people did. Oh, Ako Ayozaki didn't betray the slightest hint of a smile. See you later. Huh? And with that friendly farewell, Sojiro walked towards the end of the hallway, or so she thought before he turned into the next class over. Did he just? Sojiro headed straight for one of the classroom's windows. Whereupon he opened it with ease. The chilly November air filled the room as the soft sounds of the rain doubled in volume. In that instant, she realized his intentions to open the window. She really wished she hadn't. No, stop. He already had one leg out the window when she dashed to stop him. What do you think you're doing? What am I doing? I'm leaving from a job. That's what. You do know that this window isn't an exit, don't you? I mean, do you even know what floor you're on? She saw the light of understanding dawn in his eyes. Oh my god, I almost died. What the? Are there no second floors where he lives? Oh my god, I almost died. Who would put an X in there? This is dangerous? It's the lack of something between your ears that's dangerous. Her insult went right over his head. People here don't normally enter and exit through windows, okay? You should probably remember this information for future references. Oh, I know. I just wanted to save some time. But thanks, I'll be more careful from now on. He pulled his leg back inside and closed the window. His school uniform was soaking wet from the rain. Hey, be my guest. Go outside any way you like. Just don't do it in front of me from now on. Anyways, you start school tomorrow, right? Yeah, I'm a little nervous though, which is why I came in early for the tour. And you had him wait for an hour. You should be ashamed of yourself. He bid her farewell before running away down the hallway. She hoped he will walk down the stairs and leave through the school entrance like a normal person. Oh, I wonder if he's really going to be okay here. Why do I keep skipping when she's talking? The image of him disappearing into the distance popped into her head in the spite of her ear. She had no intention of spending any more time with him, and yet she felt strangely anxious. She couldn't tell if that feeling was fueled by concern or irritation. Why had she even forgotten angry with this insignificant transfer student in the first place? A strange day with a strange transfer student resulting in strange emotions. Her head tilted as her reflections on what should have been a more enjoyable day than irritating experience she had just. Whatever. It's not as if I'll see him again. Wrong about that. You two are going to be the MCs? The sound of the rain echoed quietly all around her. The gray sky seemed frozen in time. It was impossible to discern whether it was morning or evening. Mr. Yamashiro and Aku were likely the only two at the school. The unlit classroom looked overly gloomy and ominous as Asuko stood in it alone. One sec. Okay. She pulled up her left sleeve. Her daintily unremarkable watch showed it's almost 1 o'clock. He was right about that time. He was right about the time. She looked out the window at the grounds below. She saw a boy in uniform running through the rain without an umbrella, a sight she must have seen before, but for whatever reason, affected her far more than she wished. Is that the end of the chapter? Oh, never mind. Aqua did not sit by the faculty room before heading home. While Mr. Yamashiro offered to drive her home was tempting, she decided it will ultimately be far more satisfying to run his day just like he had hers. She walked as quietly as she could towards the entrance and opened her bright red umbrella. As she had predicted that morning, the rain was waning in the afternoon. At this rate, it would probably cease completely in an hour, so the distant sunshine would likely have reached her by the time she arrived home.
ま、それ
Well,
に
I
悪くない
suppose
わ。
it could be worse. She shrugged her shoulders in resignation. She neither liked nor disliked the rain, but she found herself enjoying her walk home with her red umbrella in hand. That's a cool shot. The teachers at Miyazaki High School weren't fond of bright colors, so Aqua's red umbrella was an unusual sight. A ghost story about how the umbrella was once pure white had been making the rounds, but it featured Aqua instead of a ghost. It was with that what? It was with that umbrella that she made her way towards Miyazaki Station. The private Miyazaki High School got its name from the town of the same name. It's named after the area. The area was once a sprawl or farmland and woodland, but rapid growth over the last 10 years had led to unprecedented modernization. There were some who fought to preserve Miyazaki's natural
残す
treasures.
ことには
I
賛
agree
成
in
です
principle to
が、
preserving the
そ
land,
れ
but
で
not at
も
the expense of
残
our
すだけに
prosperity. With those words, the mayor snuffed out the voices of the minority and ushered in a long-term plan for new urban development. More than enough funds for the urban development were collected, and then unassuming town of Miyazaki became the largest. What? Miyazaki became the largest municipality of Miyazaki City in merely 10 years. I just rewinded again. Even though it lacked the modern, oh my, I cannot read. The modernity of the neighboring Yashirogi, or the elegance of Miyazaki Hills.
それも当然よね。
What did people expect? To
どうい
keep
う
the
事故っ
town
ても
hidden atop the
も
mountain
ともとは
forever?
山
It's
中
not
の
like they
宿場
were
町だし、
flattened the mountain or something.
山ご
I skipped it again. Urbanization had been contained by the lowlands around the station, with most of the hills and mountains still standing as they did 10 years prior. The exhaustion fund succeeded in protecting the old Miyazaki where the citizens could not. It became a truly odd suburb town, welcoming an increasingly urban population with its vestiges of old country charm. Miyazaki High School was a private school established long before the town's current state. The original campus, built 50 years ago, was located high up in the mountains, making its current location its second incarnation. Okay. The path to the old grounds was remote, steep, and also well tuned by animals. For these reasons, among others, Miyazaki High School had been shuttered until almost 20 years ago, when it received a donation from a department store chain that allowed for the construction of a new campus in the city. So that was the old school. And thus Mia High School reopened its doors and the old woodland campus forgotten. In fact, most of the students attending Miyazaki High School were not from Miyazaki at all. The hardy rustic people of this country town preferred prefectural schools to private ones. Oh, it's a private school. Truth be told, Ako herself was one of them. All she had all she had wanted after junior high school was to move to Tokyo, where she had hoped to spend her days enjoying live music on her way to entering a public university. But her hopes were dashed with her sister's departure. Sister. With her sister's departure? Where did I read that? But her hopes were dashed with her sister's departure. So here she was, walking alone in town with only a red umbrella to keep her company on what should have been a day off.
思い返してみると、
Looking back on it now, it's
私の
like my
人
whole
生っ
life
て
had been one
なん
disaster
か
after
災難
another.
続きっぽい。
Her frustration evaporated into the cold December air. That's such a cool shot.
でもま、いっか。退
Oh
屈
well,
だ
at
けは
least
しな
it's
いわ
not
けだし。
boring. With those words, her mood brightened a bit as she left the school in her wake. The busier part of town met her at the bottom of the gently sloping road. Such a cool shot. Who's the one in the hills? She looks important. Miyazaki training station was brand new. Once looking no prettier than abandoned factory. It had been renovated into a multi-purpose structure with a huge department store on its east and west side. This is such a nice area. That looks so cool. When the department stores first opened, Aqua and her friends had been impressed with their modern feel, but in time the stores too became dated. She had no shopping to do today, so she passed them by. What she really wanted to do was rest at a cafe, but she fought the urge knowing her roommate would never let her hear the end of it as she frittered away her money. Oh, that's the same sound effect from her grandfather. I remember that. What's going on? She looked back and blinked. For just a moment, she could have sworn she had seen someone suspicious in a red dress out of the corner of her eye. Did someone just run by super fast? Huh? It must have been her imagination. The sixth sense chill was experiencing down her spine was a familiar one at this point. She continued her walk home, brushing off the event as if it had never happened. In time, the chill faded, and all that was left was the sounds of town. Ah, she sighed heavily. Had she imagined it? Even if it had all been in her head, she was far from comfortable with the feeling that still lingered. Even more mosquitoes have have the grace to buzz off eventually, she grumbled under her breath. Whatever good or bad, this too shall pass, so the saying goes. Yeah, I've got enough on my plate as it is. Unfortunately, summer and bugs go hand in hand. She could see how bugs could be drawn to all the sweet fruit. Okay, where are we now? Did we come back to Sojiro? Let me turn this on. Rank from the grease and the heat, the kitchen was closed for the time being. The lunch rush had come and gone. But one last battle remained at dinner time. Only after the evening shows could the kitchen crew remove their white armor and call it a day. And in the midst of the war zone was a lone newcomer. Do I have to wear this? His voice was uneasy, betraying how new he was. I know how you feel, man, but I feel the same. Unfortunately, it's the boss's orders. So you have to suck it up, okay? The future of this shopping arcade is at stake, apparently. I really hate to ask, but the rain had stopped. So would you mind going out for me? Get back in one piece and I'll buy you dinner. His bright orange co-worker clasped his hands together as if it begging for forgiveness that he saddened him with the unreasonable task. Bum 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 bum. That's such a big hill. 10 years ago, Miyazaki City was a town of farm and woodland. But everything had changed. The front of the station was now lined with the hill, multi-story buildings, and the residential areas were similarly full of apartment complexes. The once rustic scenery around the station had long become a thing of the past. Shironizuka was the only place in the city that had still contained vestiges of the old town, a pocket of the past inside an urban jungle. The road extended up a conspicuously long hill to an old residential district far from the hustle and bustle of the train station. Long ago, it had been considered unwise to build on high ground so nobody lived above a certain elevation. Shironizuka, sitting at the top of a hill in the middle of town, was no exception to that conventional and had no resistance to speak of. The asphalt continued for some time, eventually giving up way to the mountain road that was swallowed in the cover of trees. A lone vending machine stood to... Is that the mansion she lives up there? Is that where she was walking? A lone vending machine stood to mark the boundary between the town and beyond. Or is that the old high school? What? Even the children knew that there was nothing beyond the new playground development, so that so enthralled them. Well, that was not entirely true. There was nothing besides the haunted house. Oh, okay, so that's her house. Ako Ayozaki is traveling the long slope. Below her, she could see the whole of Miyazaki. The symmetrical town looked like a miniature set from this height. It would look like a painting if there had been a sea next to it, but unfortunately Miyazaki City was very much landlocked. While it was overcast at the moment, the scene was quite breathtaking on clear evenings. The view was the one thing that made the arduous climb worthwhile, and today she had been denied even that. Oh, because of the rain? I'd
雨
cycle
の
home
日
if
は
it
自転車
wasn't for
も
this
使え
rain.
ない
Even a
し
bus route would be fine. Would be fine thing. Aqua had been using this road to get to school for almost 2 years now, but this journey had never gotten easier. Yeah, I bet.
あれ
Oh,
鍵閉まってる
oh,
の
it's locked.
アリス
I guess
また
Alice
帰っ
isn't back yet. With a weary shrug, she put her hand on the rusty iron fence. Quietly, the heavy gate swung open as if to welcome her home. Oh, my leg is caught up by the cables. That's such a good song. Boom. There's set atop the hill a haunted house. That is how the story much shared around the town used to begin. But fresh rumors about the house had sprung to life almost as fast as the town's modernization. Despite being dilapidated and abandoned for many years, lights can be seen inside the house at night. An angry murder of crows often gather atop of the hill before mysteriously vanishing. Children get lost in the fog, never to be seen again. Later at night, a shrieking sound can be heard all the way to this sound. Particular piece of slander was one of Akko's wish discredit the most. The final rumor was of an eye-catching luxury car that sometimes made its way up and down the hill. What, the sister? Or is it dad? The rumors spread and grew by the day, and while they grew, the house that everything thought had rotted away was restored over the recent years. Deep in wood on top of a hill no one dared to approach. Like a ruin shrouded from view on never brightfuls of day. I did not read that right. Shrouded from view even on the brightest of days, stood a relic out of time, a building from a fairy tale. That's a nice house. The house. That's such a nice house. Was the Kunoji Mansion. Everyone in town knew about this witch's house on the hill. Is that why it's called Witch on the Holy Night? Oh, is she the witch on the Holy Night? I understood that reference. The unabashedly haunted house where Ako Ayozaki resided for no reasons unknown. Needless to say, it was not really haunted. The Kunoji family home was a grand Western-style mansion with a long and storied history, stretching all the way back to England. This house reminds me of the Ein's house from Ancient Magus Bride. It looks so cool, dude. It's such a cozy feeling. It was too small to be a dormitory, yet too big to be called a house. The main building contained as many as 3 normal houses worth of rooms, and it was surrounded by a large, all-encompassing courtyard. The perimeter of the grounds was surrounded by a high iron fence covered in thorny vines. There was also an annex to the main building. Given such extravagance, it was no wonder that it inspired rumors. To the town residents, the mere existence of such a lavish and out-of-place mansion on top of the hill was a cause for suspicion. Rumors, lies, and slanders were the prices to be paid for fame. With only 2 lodgers, it was hard to disagree with the perception that weren't vampires are a thing. Yeah, I know there's vampires. Yeah, there is vampires in the Naso universe, right? All right. I guess this is where they introduced vampires. With only 2 lodgers, it was hard to disagree with the perception that vampires must be living here.
ま、私は
Well,
と
I
も
know
か
I'm
く
not the only one, but Alice. Oh yeah, we haven't met Alice. She put her hand on the front door. It was a grand double door that would have paired well with a brass lock, and yet it was secured with little more than a simple keyhole. Pushing it open with one hand, she entered the supposedly haunted house. And by the way, let's do this. If vampires were not enough to scare you, ghosts were known to appear on certain nights. I know ghosts were a thing in Kar no Kyokai, so this is all real. So these aren't just rumors anymore. Much like the weather outside, the floor was overcast with shades of gray. Perhaps by deliberate design, the architect had chosen not to include any lights in the entrance area. The ceiling was 2 floors high. The only light in the room came from the skylight. It was particularly gloomy on rainy days. On moonless nights, it was like the world itself ceased to be. Akko decided the drawing room to the east would be a good place to rest, but knowing that she would not be able to relax until she changed the clothes, she started up the stairs. The stairs curled up the wall to the 2nd floor hall. There was a 3rd floor, the attic as well, accessible from the far of that hill. Oh, from what? Accessible from the far end of the hall. She had never set foot in there in 2 years she had lived here, though. Oh, she has a minor. The Kunjuji I can't even pronounce it. The Kuonji mansion was more or less divided into two wings, east and west. Akko had been given the entire east wing, but 2 rooms were more than enough as far as she was concerned. She had no desire to open a door that would trap you in a storybook world or lead you to the attic that had only been used for storage these last 5 years. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Akka's room was at the end of the east wing's long corridor. She had elected for a smaller room for no other reason other than she had thought it would be easier to clean. It was furnished with a large bed, her beloved mahogany desk, a wardrobe and chest for her clothes, and 2 9-shelf books. She has that many bookcases. She needs that much space? That is all she brought with her from home. Her entire life of 16 years reduced to this. She borrowed the next room down for her own purposes.
そうだ。
Oh
アリ
yeah,
ス
I
に
should
もらった
check on the
見張りと
watchtower I got
壊
from
れてないかチェッ
Alice.
クしないと。
Okay. I hear fireworks outside. She needed to see if the project she had been working on all night had borne fruit. The study next door served as proof of the life she had been living for the last year and how different that life was from the one she had lived before. It was not a room for the person she had been, it was a room for the person she would eventually become, a place of solitude that only she could enter, or she thought.
うわ、
Wow, not
壊れ
only
てる
did
ど
it
ころ
break,
か
it vanished without a
跡
trace.
形もなく消え去
Looks
って
like
る。
I've still got a long way to go. Go
やっ
ahead,
ぱ自
laugh
己
it
流
up,
アレンジ
Robin.
はまだ早かったか。
Who's Robin?
いいわよ。笑いなさいよ、コマドリ。
Is that the sister? Oh, the bird? The noisy neighbor that had intruded upon her sanctuary flew away. While not exceptionally talented, Akko did not lack for effort and was not afraid to fail. One could have almost mistaken her approach for optimism. I keep pushing B instead of A. What's with the piano? I need the soundtrack to this game. She changed out of her I can't read. She changed out of her uniform and returned to the first floor. Is she putting on perfume? Dun, 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 dun. Down the stairs, she opened the door to the east wing in the corridor. Was as dark as a cellar. The absence of windows meant it was pitch black without the lights on, so she flicked the switch on. No, so she flicked the switch and entered the neighboring doorway. Living room? Oh, just like my old TV.
元気のない
Sany
生活
instead of
か。
Sony, right?
想
Or
像
no,
したくないな。
Sany? That's pretty funny. They couldn't get the they couldn't get the licensing. Life without electricity, I don't even want to imagine it. It had been her idea to update open the drawing room. The walls were decorated with extravagant patterns, and around the room were her large, majestic sofas. A luxurious Persian rug. Amidst it all was a 30-inch television that seemed completely out of the place. It stood looking over the other furniture like the emperor with no clothes. The mansion's owner would have rather done without it, but a commoner like Akko, it was an essential commodity. They had fought over its presence at first, but eventually came to an agreement, and now mutually enjoyed this modern comfort. Well, who? Alice?
なんだ。
Guess I'm one to talk. I came from a pretty traditional household myself. Now in a somewhat pleasant room, she decided to brew some tea. She boiled some water in the kitchen, prepared a teapot, and made herself some black tea. Bum, 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 bum.
あ
With a flop, she sank into the sofa. She took a sip of her tea, then another. What a shot. That's a screenshot. Oh, it stopped raining, just like they said. Look at that. Clear skies. That's a very holy night. Look at the stars. Oh, is that the transition to nighttime? Lulled by the tickering of the clock, she took a third sip, and as she pondered how to spend her afternoon, the sofa almost seemed to be inviting her as she sunk even further into the comforting embrace. Oh, who's that? Ako blearily opened her eyes as she lifted her body up from the cushions. Who's this? Alice, right? This was no dream or delusion. At some point, a girl had sat down across from her. Not to the least bit surprised, she reached for her teacup. But the tea within her had gone completely cold. Did I just doze off? She asked the question to the girl on the other side of the table. Yes. The girl answered without lifting her gaze. When silent, she could have been mistaken for a beautiful doll. The girl sitting on the opposite sofa was reading an old book. She had delicate limbs and pale white skin. Not a hint of humanity emanated from her melancholic aura. She had darker hair than Ako, and her icy eyes were focused on the pages in front of her. Her clothes resembled that of a nun, but were actually her school uniform. In Ako's humble opinion, the gloominess... She just reminds me of a character from Garden of Sinners, man. In Ako's humble opinion, the gloominess suited her. She invoked something like out of a painting. There was something unreal about her, as if she was frozen in time. The white of her neck was so lovely that even Ako found herself enchanted by it. The girl was one of the haunted house's 2 residents. Her name was Alice Kunoji. Oh, so she's one of the people that lives there, right? So it's like her house or her family house, and she was at the same age as Ako. How long was I asleep? At least an hour. You'll catch a cold if you keep sleeping here. Alice answered indifferently, not just like her. Not that it bothered Ako, who was now used to it. She looked at the clock on the wall and saw that it was already 7. She had been asleep for 2 hours. The day had been a rough one for her, and she hadn't slept a little night before, so it was no surprise that she had dozed off for as long as she had. You could have woken me up. Now my tea is cold. It was already cold by the time I got here. I'm sure it was. I'm just saying. Ako drank down the rest of the cold tea in one gulp. In the poorly heated Kunoji mansion, that was more than enough to clear her head and wake up. Nothing quite beats this tea, not even the expensive kind of Britain. Oh, did I read that wrong? I don't think that was Britain. Anyways, welcome home, Alice. The universe seems determined to keep me from even the occasional luxury without you. What is it about today? Just my luck or what? At this rate, I'm due for a temple visit, just to be safe. Ako shrugged her shoulders as resigning herself to her fate. Something happened? After 2 years together, they knew each other quite well. Ako had one way of asking questions, and Alice had another. Alice asked without raising her hand, and Ako gave her the details. I should start by apologizing. The project I was working on all night was a total failure, and even though I only took my eyes off it for a second, it might have just bowled over and been destroyed. Though I'll add that I shuffled the circulation codes as a precaution. Ako tried to laugh it off as it was someone else's problem. And? Something came up this morning, and I was called into school. They made me show the transfer student around, and it took up my whole day. By the time I got back, it had vanished without a trace. You're not mad, are you? Hardly. If I got mad every time you broke something, there would be no end to it. Oh wait, there would be no end to the fighting. I have normal materials, so you could just start over. However, aren't you really the one who's angry? Alex was very much on point today. It was true that despite outward appearances, Ako was setting up with frustration. That aside, true enough, the transfer student I mentioned earlier was a real piece of work. He's been living deep in the mountains, had literally zero common sense. I know that people say that the mountains are like an entirely different world, but I had no idea how true it was, Alice. Alice raised her head in response to hearing her name. But Akko kept going on before she could get a word, and edgewise, Akko, after all, expected no sympathy in the first place. We didn't get along well from the start, but things really took a turn for the worse when I took him to the classroom. He apparently thought it was a place where he could get one-on-one tutoring, and that's not all. I mean, you're never gonna believe this. What do you think he asked when I politely explained what a classroom is to him? But then what are the other classrooms for? Unbelievable, right? I mean, a classroom is for a classroom. And no matter how vague or unhelping anything I said was, he just kept nodding. It's like just he was taking everything at face value. I don't know if he was just lacks in imagination or never uses it. Anyways, he at least seems to grasp most of what I told him in the first time around, so I suppose he's not a complete idiot. It's rare to see you so judgmental. Is it really worth getting worked up over something like that? I couldn't care less about him. I'm just so worried he'll screw some... Oh, I skipped it. I couldn't care less about him. I'm just worried he'll screw up somehow. What she was really worried about was having to clean up the mess if and when it happened. That had to be it. If not, it would mean she had no real idea why she could not get him out of her head. Well, he was a weirdo, alright. You two would probably hit it off great. Another world in the mountains doesn't sound so bad. But from her eyes, it was clear the question on whether they would get along was irrelevant given that they would never meet in the first place. That's a nice screenshot. Akko gave a non-commentable response. Anyways, what have you been reading? Oh, speaking of reading. With the power of magic, there's going to be a quick jump. And with power of magic, we're back. Anyway, what have you been reading? A book about spiritual evolution based on the spiritual diary. Why? I'm already skipping. Ah, Swedenborg, huh? Is that really worth reading again? I wouldn't bother with the original, but this is a knockoff. It exaggerates the pros and cons of Swedenborg's style and reads like a well-written adventure. Having the secret organization standing in his way was a nice addition. The handwriting of notes in the margin belongs to your grandfather, by the way. Oh, the magician. Huh? I had no idea he was into that sort of thing. He had a great sense of humor. I really miss him. Oh, is he dead? Akko seemed nostalgic over her now deceased grandfather. He just contacted you this last summer, didn't he? Do you really have to go there? Why can't dead stay dead? Akko sighed and lay back on the sofa. The sofa cushions caved in under her weight. As I was saying, Alice shot a glance at Akko. Her body buried in the sofa remained as still as a corpse. It was clear Akko had tuned out of the conversation. Alice silently chastised her with a look. The more she thought about it, the less important the events of the day seemed to become. If she just ignored Alice, the conversation would end there. They would eventually get up and leave today's mistake unresolved for another day. However, that's not the kind of person Akko Ayozaki was. Yeah, what is it? She asked, still lying down. It's upsetting that you failed today. Like I said, I'm not thinking about it. I need to focus on becoming a full-fledged maid before thinking about school. I know that. I hope you do. The coldness in her voice made Akko gnash her teeth. She knew what Alice wanted to say. She knew better than anyone. The veneer she wore for school was different than the way she lived at home. Well, it could be called hiding in plain sight. Alice thought it was silly. And what the silence told her was... What was she saying? Oh, make up your mind already, I know. Today's failure was not a colossal one. She just happened to upset the delicate balance between her home and the school lives, chasing one at the expense of the other. And yet, the carelessness mistake was a clear sign of Akko's lack of commitment.
アリスは関係
This
ない。
doesn't concern to Alice, it's my decision to make. I keep reading through it quick. She had only known for sure for the last year and a half, but she'd had a hunch for as long as she could remember. Make the choice and the day will come. It was little wonder that her morals and consciousness had been stripped away. Akko pushed herself back up. She was met by Alice's cold beauty and wordless gaze.
オッケー、アリス。
Okay, Alice, we
来
can do
週
it
中
next
に
week.
決着をつけよう。それでいいんでしょ？
That work for you? Yup.
ええ。
No. As long as it works for you. Alright, I love it. Akko could not help but shake her head, feeling like she was hearing something similar to the second time that day. Flashbang! Even in that comfort of her own, she couldn't banish the thoughts of that country boy from her mind.
じゃあ下準備はよろし
I'll
く
let
ね。
you set it up then.
私まだできないし。
That's still beyond my abilities. Oh,
場
magic
所は例の
circles?
公園でいい？
Should we do it at that park?
妥当な線ね。
Sure, the line there's suitable enough,
でも
but
も
what
う一
about the
件の
other
方
thing?
は？そっちの方が急務じゃない？
Isn't that a more urgent concern?
時と場合。
It depends on the conditions.
森に
I'll
変
let you
化があ
know
れ
there
ば
are
教
any
えるわ。
changes to the woods. After that brief exchange, Alice returned her attention to the books on her lap. Shop talk was over. Now they could return to their normal relationships as roommates. Akko grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. Since Alice was busy reading, Akko decided to tune into variety shows that had already been started. Ah. Alice started to speak out, but suddenly cut herself off. Why? On one of her delicate hands raised to her mouth, she would always cut herself off the second she realized she was about to say something trivial. Sometimes her self-restraint would hit too late, and she would make a gesture like that when she was making now. It occurred to Akko that the ah sound her cute little roommate made just now was different from the wah she blurted in times past. Huh? What is it? Akko turned down the volume of the TV, her intense eyes lit up by those of a mischievous
ど
cat.
うというこ
It's
とは
nothing
ない
really
んだ
but.
けど。ないんだ
But
けど。
what? Look at that face. Alice looked away bashfully, not knowing if she should bring it up or not. It was times like these that her expressions carried a real warmth and surprising charm. That's the screenshot. That's funny. If she could see her in that moment, Alice's father would have to admit that her... Why is her father not here? Alice's father would have to admit that her name suited her perfectly.
今日
It's just that I saw
帰ってく
something
る
strange
時
on
お
my
かし
way
なも
home
のを
and
見
wanted to tell
て
something about it. Akko nodded, beckoning her to continue.
つまらない
It's silly,
け
really,
ど
but I just can't make
どう
sense of
考え
it no
ても
matter
そん
how
なこ
much
と
I think
あ
about it. Akko, do you have any idea what a
人間
man-sized
ぐらい
cat
の
would be
大きな
riding around
猫が
town delivering meals to people? I keep skipping when I'm done reading. For a second, Akko thought Alice was trying and failing miserably to make a joke again. One would think that about anyone, really, but she seemed completely serious. Even Alice's sense of humor fell flat. For Akko, the story already sounded more fanciful than Alice's usual attempts at jokes. Akko concluded that her roommate was talking about something that she had actually seen.
うーん
There are a few things off
そ
about
の
that. Maybe
話
we
には
should break
2
it
つ
down.
いいの
Let's not. Even I
私
can
もか
think
ら
of
く
a
りぐら
few
いは思
mundane
いつく
explanations.
ただ
I'm just
理由
asking
がわ
because
か
I
らない
can't
か
figure
ら
out
聞
why
いてる
somebody would do that. Maybe it's as simple as someone just
わざわ
dressing
ざ
up in a
精巧
fine
な
crafty
猫のぬい
catsuit
ぐ
to
るみ
deliver
を着
food for a
て
restaurant. It's
難易度
Shiro!
以前に
I'm
そ
more
れをや
worried
る
about
人
the
間の常
person
識性を
doing
疑
it
う
than
け
their
どね
reasons,
私
personally. Yeah, right? It's a part-time job? Alice nodded attentively at her
まあ
words.
世
But
の
whatever
中い
does
ろ
it
い
for
ろある
them,
か
I
ら
guess. In a world without
私
people
たち
just
み
like
た
that,
い
no
なのもい
weirdos,
れ
the
ば
lives of mountain
下界か
hermits,
ら
there's
遮
no
断さ
telling
れた
what kind
山
of
奥
freaks
で
are
暮
out
らし
there.
ていたやつまで10人私だったら見かけた
I
ら声
personally
か
would
け
have
て
just gone up
理
to
由
them
を
and
尋ね
asked
ただろう
them
け
what
ど
they were doing. Alice's gaze drifted at that.
ふーん
A delivery cat running
ク
through
レ
the
イク
neighborhoods in
住
the
宅街
evening.
に
Sounds
さ
like
まよ
something
う
straight
江
out of a
前
fancy
猫
book.
で今日の
Hey,
夕
what
飯
should
どう
we
す
do
る
for dinner tonight?
せ
Speaking
っ
of
かく
delivery,
話が
maybe
出
we
た
should
し
order in.
私らも
What are we gonna eat? Akko loved getting takeout, and her face glowed as she spoke. They had no hard rules for dinner, but if one of them was in the mood for a cook, they could make it to a point to make enough for the two. At the very worst, this meant entire weeks without dinner, but the two of them agreed that this was the system that worked best for them. Whether they found cooking to be too much effort or simply like ordering out, nights like this one were a common occurrence, much to the chagrin of the restaurants of Misaki Town. Delivering to the mansion meant coming all the way up to the top of this hill, the source of their
時間は
disgruntlement.
8
It's
時
still
前
before 8, so we're
ギリギ
good.
リセーフね
I'm really in the mood for
私今月がいい
kongetsu
な
tonight. I haven't
あそこの
had
月
their
見そば最近ご無沙汰だったし
tsukimi soba in ages. Tsukehime. I understood that reference. The hungry student council president took out their many menus and excitedly looked for anything that stood out. Alice casually responded without sparing so much as a glance.
悪いけど
Sorry.
私夕飯済んで
She ate. Sorry, but I've already had dinner. The cut to black and white. With those words, Aqua froze. All deliveries required a minimum of 2 items, so she was out of luck without an accomplice. Cruel society had decided it couldn't be bothered to deliver to Princess with only ordering a single serving of food. Yeah, it's a pretty big help. I wouldn't do that. Incidentally, to the counterattack, order the Hilltop Mansion restaurants had decided the minimum number of orders will be 3 starting next year. Aqua and Alice were still in the dark of this to this fiendish change in direction. Traitor? Is that why you were late getting back? Between the bus ride and the walk, the trip home takes only 20 minutes. That takes 20 minutes? I should have known something was up when you didn't get home before 5 o'clock. Unfortunately for Aqua, she had been too out of it to even remember that she was the one who'd fallen asleep. Talk about the ice cream. I thought it was clear that if either of us got food, we would bring enough for the other person. That's a screenshot. Didn't I bring back something for you when I ate out last time? It was unknown how serious Aqua was being, but she was visibly angry. She had already woken up hungry that morning, and from the time she was called in school until now, she had consumed nothing but tea. It was a small miracle that her stomach was not growling. How does her stomach not growling? She knew it was her own fault, but she persisted wanting to get revenge on Alice for scolding her earlier. By last time, you mean? Oh, come back? The time you went in to sit and ate sushi, but only came back with a plastic bag full of convenience store food. That time? Akko had kicked a hornet's nest. So what? It was better than nothing, wasn't it? There are times when you'd be better off saying nothing at all. Alice's icy gaze pierced right through her. Akko had certainly crossed a line by going on and about how the sushi circled around the restaurant while Alice ate her convenience store meal. But new things fascinated her, and she couldn't contain her curiosity towards the conveyor belt sushi shops that started popping up at the time. They were nothing short of miraculous. Even honesty can be a sin given the right circumstances. Fine, I get it. Does that mean at least we're even now? Yes. Alice went back to her book without so much as recognizing the question. The fact that she did not confirm it made Aqua anxious. She's just mad. I'll just make a PB&J. Well, today has been a total disaster. I guess I'll just whip up something in the kitchen. She stood up, announcing her intent to no one in particular. Oh, I almost forgot to ask. Where did you end up eating anyway? Alice's hand froze on her current page. She suddenly shut the book and she was reading and stood up as if wit's end. She walked across the drawing room with her book in hand. When she reached the door, she stopped and turned towards Akko. You really want to know? Where? Sure. Akko nodded, timidly cowed by Alice's sudden vigor. Alice continued into her matter-of-fact way. The cat gave me one of his leftover deliveries. And with that brief response, she left the room. That was pretty funny. Did we do it? Oh, we did it! Yay! Chapter 1 done. Witch on the Holy Night. Alright. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll upload part 2 as soon as I can. Let me know what you know about the Nulciverse. Tell me if you're a type. What? I can't even speak. Tell me if you're a type moon connoisseur or not. And I'll see you next time. Good night. Be safe wherever you live. And peace.